With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 7 and 9 together. Mr. Speaker, as a former publican, I know these are hard times for businesses on the high street. We're investing £200 million in our plans for neighbourhoods in Scotland, with £20 million worth of funding for towns including Irvine, Greenock, Kilmarnock, Coatbridge, Clydebank, Elgin, Dumfries, Arbroath, Peterhead and Kirkwall. Of course, it would help if the Scottish Government extended business rates relief to retail and leisure businesses, as is the case south of the border. Many businesses in Scotland are asking where that money went.
Does the Secretary of State agree with me that it was astonishing that the SNP voted against the £8 million to regenerate Hamilton Town Centre? And that only Labour's Davy Russell will stand up for local people, jobs and services.
Mr. Speaker, I've bought glasses to see if I can find an ounce of credibility in the SNP's candidate in Hamilton for voting against that £8 million. The SNP candidate is a councillor from Cambuslang who stood for election twice in Rutherglen, sought selection in Shettleston and then voted against £8 million for the Hamilton Town Centre before seeking selection there. If Scotland were to elect councillors with a single transferable vote, she appears to be the SNP's single transferable candidate.
Speaker, proud industrial heritage, a strong community spirit and an overwhelming feeling of being let down and underinvested in by the previous Conservative government is something which unites towns in my constituency with those across Scotland, including those in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse. In Wales, Labour's Transforming Towns programme has invested in Holywell in my constituency. Will the Secretary of State join me? Will the Secretary of State join me in asking and calling on the SNP to U-turn and to finally back Labour's plans to invest in Hamilton Town Centre?
Mr. Speaker, what a wonderful representative the Honourable Lady is to her constituency, and I couldn't agree with her more. The SNP candidate is yet to explain to voters in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse why she voted against the much-needed £8 million investment in Hamilton Town Centre. I hope she will explain before tomorrow's vote. If she doesn't, everyone should back Labour's Davy Russell.
Stephen Flynn. I'll tell you what's bad for town centres, and that is job losses. On the watch of this government, Robert Gordon's University have been forced to publish a report which outlines that there could be 400 job losses in the North Sea every 2 weeks. That is a Grangemouth type shutdown every 2 weeks. How many jobs have to be lost in my constituency for his government to act?
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the SNP in this House voted against the setting up of GB Energy in his own constituency that are creating jobs in Scotland. He's against the EU trade deal. He's against the US trade deal. He's against the India trade deal. He is bad for jobs and they should go.
Across North East Scotland, such as Aberdeen, Inverurie, Kintore, Ellen in my constituency, they are all going to need regeneration in the future if his government keeps decimating the oil and gas sector. The best thing he can do, that his government can do for the North East of Scotland, is to allow new licences and cut their increase to the EPL. Will he commit to doing this? Otherwise, more and more money will need to be put into North East Scotland to regenerate our towns in the future.
Mr. Speaker, it's this government that's putting money into Scottish towns to regenerate them. And as we keep saying from this dispatch box on a number of occasions, the oil and gas will be with us for decades to come, but the industry itself is making the transition. We have to make sure that transition happens, and it happens for the benefit of workers in North East of Scotland and all over Scotland. But it's a transition, Mr. Speaker, that I'm not even sure the Honourable Lady or the party opposite actually now back.
Annalise Midgley.
Question number 8, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, following the spring statement, it was confirmed that the block grant for Scotland this year was a record £50 billion. No thanks to the SNP and Reform, Mr. Speaker, who both voted against this massive funding boost for Scotland and who scrapped the Barnett formula that it delivered it. Despite that record funding, the SNP still have no plan to get waiting lists down, with 1 in 6 Scots still stuck on NHS waiting lists and educational attainment gap growing by the day.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite the record funding provided by the Labour government, the SNP plan to downgrade the neonatal intensive care unit at Wishaw General, which could force the families of sick babies to travel as far as Aberdeen for treatment and support. Does he agree with me that the SNP cut should be reversed?
Mr. Mr. Speaker. As the father of an 18-week-old daughter, I'm absolutely horrified by these proposals, and I know it will be causing anxiety for families across Lanarkshire. That's why it's so disappointing to see the SNP candidate in the Hamilton by-election back these plans to downgrade the Wishaw neonatal unit. The way to send a message to the SNP that this is unacceptable is to vote for Davy Russell tomorrow in the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election.
David Smith.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor's autumn budget delivered the biggest settlement in the history of devolution for the Scottish Government. 50 billion. I want to see that cash reach the frontline services which have suffered years of cuts under the SNP. And that record settlement is only possible because of the Barnett formula, something opposed not only by the Scottish Nationalists, but also the member for Clacton, whose reform circus was sent packing from Hamilton this week.
David Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the largest ever devolution settlement of $50 billion is great news for Scotland and its local authorities. But under the SNP, there are 840,000 cases on NHS waiting lists. This affects people in my constituency in North Northumberland, many of whom use cross-border healthcare and dental services. So, does the Minister agree with me that the SNP needs to sort itself out and start delivering change to the NHS as Labour is in England?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I could not agree more. In England, waiting lists have fallen since Labour came to office less than a year ago, while in Scotland they continue to rise, and now we see nearly 1 in 6 Scots waiting for treatment. John Swinney has, in total desperation, announced this SNP government's 5th recovery NHS plan in less than 4 years. But the reality is patients, staff and we all know Scotland desperately needs a new direction.
Before we start Prime Minister's questions, I'd like to welcome in the gallery the Speaker of Bahrain and his delegation. A big welcome to you. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Clive Efford.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we're investing £15.6 billion in transport infrastructure of the North and of the Midlands. Mr. Speaker, we're decisively turning the page on a failed economic model of low investment, and we're backing the talent and prospects of the whole country. And over coming weeks, we'll set out plans for further investment and renewal. Mr. Speaker, our strategic defence review shows this government will never gamble with our national security. Through the biggest sustained increase since the Cold War, we will transform our defence, strengthen our nation and invest in jobs and industry across the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Clive Efford.
Mr. Speaker, we all remember the glorious summer in 2012 when the world's greatest athletes came to London to compete in the Olympics and the Paralympics. It showcased Britain at its best, not just in track and field, but also as a country that can host major cultural and sporting events. My right honourable friend has been written to by over 200 of our top athletes. Some of them are members of Cambridge Harriers that meets in my constituency, and they're calling for the government to support the bid for the 2029 World Athletics Championships to take place in London. If successful, it will lift the whole nation. If successful, it will lift the whole nation. It will inspire a generation of new athletes. It will showcase Britain on a world stage, put £400 million into our economy. What's not to like?
I think the race has finished. Go on, Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. One of the greatest achievements of the last Labour government was that 2012 Olympics in London, and we all remember it. Can I pay tribute, given the response, can I pay tribute to the extraordinary contribution of Tessa Jowell to that Games? Agree there have been huge economic benefits of hosting major sporting events, as well as an important legacy.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemibero.
Mr. Speaker, 3 weeks ago, the winter fuel policy was set in stone. 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister U-turned. Today, the Chancellor is rushing her plans because she just realised when winter is. So, on behalf of the pensioners who want to know, can the Prime Minister be clear with us here and now? How many of the 10 million people who lost their winter fuel payments will get it back?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm glad to see she's catching up with what happened 2 weeks ago. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, at the budget, we took the right decision to stabilise the economy because of the £22 billion black hole that they left. And the signs, we took the right decisions. The growth figures are up, the interest rates have been cut, and we got 3 trade deals. So we will look again, as I said 2 weeks ago, at the eligibility for winter fuel, and of course we'll set out how we pay for it. But because we've stabilised the economy, Mr. Speaker, we on this side are committed to the triple lock, and that increased pensions by over £400 this April. On their side, they say the triple lock is unsustainable, and I think her position is she wants to means test it.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister clearly has selective amnesia. I asked him 3 questions about the winter fuel payment 2 weeks ago, and he was floundering. The fact is, he hasn't answered the question I asked him. He hasn't answered the question I asked him. He can't tell us who will get the payments. All we see is U-turn after U-turn. His head must be spinning. Will he apologise now for taking the payments away in the first place, including to his own backbenchers? And can he tell us how he's going to pay for this?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we took the right decisions at the budget because we needed to stabilise the economy. She needs to apologise for the fact that they left the economy in a terrible state. We had a mini-budget which blew up the economy, and we were left with a £22 billion black hole. When she gets up, perhaps she should apologise for that.
Mr. Speaker, the OBR has said there was no such black hole. He's just given away £30 billion for the Chagos Island. That's his black hole. He hasn't stabilised the economy. Borrowing prices are higher now than any time in the last Parliament. He has not stabilised the economy. He has no clear answers on what he's doing. It's just chaos, chaos, chaos. He keeps making announcements with no detail. So let's move to another area of confusion. Can we get a simple answer? Will the government keep the 2-child benefit cap?
Mr. Speaker, I'm absolutely determined that we will drive down child poverty. That's one of the proudest things of the last Labour government. That's why we've got a task force. That's why we've got a strategy, and we'll set out that strategy in due course. But we drive child poverty down. Under them, poverty always goes up.
I didn't ask him about a task force. I asked him if he will keep the 2-child benefit cap, and he doesn't know. It's just chaos and uncertainty. He has no details. He is briefing something and causing a lot of confusion to the people out there. But on that 2-child benefit cap, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell him this. I believe in family, but I also believe in fairness. Yes. On this side of the House, we believe that people on benefits should have to make the same choices on having children as everyone else. Yes. What does the Prime Minister believe?
Mr. Speaker, I believe profoundly in driving down poverty and child poverty. That's why we'll put a strategy in place. But she talks about head spinning. There's only one leader, Mr. Speaker, who's been praised this week by the Russian embassy. And if she carries on echoing Kremlin talking points like this, Reform are going to be sending her an application form for membership.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister what he believes in. He had to look in his folder to find the answer. His MPs behind him know what they believe in. He doesn't know. Mr. Speaker, he has been in government for nearly a year. It's only going to get harder. Yes. He's been in government only a year. It's only going to get harder and harder. The canned forced laughter, the planted questions, all of this is going to disappear because at every single point, things are getting worse. He has to ask Morgan McSweeney what it is that he believes in. But the fact is the chaos is being felt in the economy. The Chancellor said she would not be coming back with new tax rises, but she will have to pay for all of these U-turns which she's announcing out there, isn't she?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to look in my folder because here I've got the quote that she had on Sky News. I will read it. Thank you. It's what the Leader of the Opposition says. It's worth listening to. What she said was this. Sky News, Mr. Speaker, Israel is fighting a proxy war on behalf of the United Kingdom, just like Ukraine is on behalf of Western Europe against Russia. Well, that was certainly noticed in the Russian embassy, because they put out a statement saying the leader of the opposition has finally called a spade a spade. Ukraine is indeed fighting a proxy war against Russia on behalf of Western interests. And they went on to say the illegitimate Kyiv regime, created, financed and armed by the West, has been at it since 2014. So they endorsed that. They want the deter. I've given the quote. That's what Russia said in response. She asked me what I believe in. I believe in standing by Ukraine and calling out Russia as the aggressor.
Mr. Speaker, it was our government that stood behind Ukraine and led the way in Europe. Everything he has said this afternoon is total nonsense. Obfuscation, avoiding the question. He doesn't have any answers. It's disgraceful. I asked him, Mr. Speaker, about the two-child benefit cap. He's talking about the Kremlin. He's saying everything he can to distract from the mess he is making of our economy. The OECD has downgraded growth for the next 2 years. He can't rule out tax rises. The police chiefs are saying they don't have the money they need to keep the public safe. Just as he's releasing more criminals onto the streets. His cabinet are squabbling with each other. They've said that they've lost control of the borders, but he still managed, Mr. Speaker, to find £30 billion to give away the Chagos Islands. This is total and utter chaos. 2 weeks ago, he was crowing about his historic trade deal and how he got 0% tariffs on steel. Now the steel industry will face 25% tariffs unless he does exactly what President Trump tells him to. It is chaos, chaos, chaos. And isn't the root of the chaos, Mr. Speaker, that it is about this Prime Minister, his decisions and his judgment?
The only advice, Mr. Speaker, she gets up on a Wednesday morning, scrolls through social media, never does any of it. We're the only country in the world that isn't paying the 50% tax on steel. And we're working in the US, and that will be coming down. We are working on it to bring it down to zero. That is going to happen.
Order. Please. Let's listen to the answer, even if you don't believe you're getting one. It is how the Prime Minister wishes to.
What did she opposes the US deal, she opposes the India deal, she opposes what we're doing with the EU, and she opposes Diego Garcia. That's a vital intelligence and strategic capability. Absolutely clear that legal uncertainty would compromise that capability in a very short time. No responsible Prime Minister would ever let that happen. We have secured the long-term basis for the base. That has been welcomed by, Mr. Speaker, welcomed by the US, NATO, Australia, New Zealand, India. They're our allies. It's been opposed by our adversaries, Russia, China and Iran. And into that column we have reform, presumably following Putin, and the Tories following reform.
Anyone who saw the 6-year-old girl fleeing the flaming shelter where her family were killed by an Israeli airstrike will carry those horrific images with them forever. These are very dark days, and Gaza is a stain on the soul of humanity, and it is a further shame that there is more moral clarity coming from Ms. Rachel on YouTube than there is from many world leaders who are complicit in silence. The Prime Minister said this week that Britain must be ready for war, and I ask, after tens of thousands of deaths, after a generation of Gazans stunted by hunger and trauma, when will it be ready for peace? When will it help to stop this genocide? When will it hold the Israeli government to account? And when will it recognise the State of Palestine?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to her for raising this, and she's absolutely right to describe this as dark days. And Israel's recent action is appalling and, in my view, counterproductive and intolerable. And we have strongly opposed the expansion of military operations and settler violence and the blocking of humanitarian aid. Mr. Speaker, you will have seen we've suspended the FTA talks and sanctioned extremists supporting violence in the West Bank. We will keep looking at further action along with our allies, including sanctions. But let me be absolutely clear. We need to get back to a ceasefire. We need the hostages who've been held for a very long time to be released. And we desperately need more aid at speed and at volume into Gaza, because it's an appalling and intolerable situation.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by welcoming reports that the Chancellor will give winter fuel payments to more pensioners this winter, though because we still wait the details, we will reserve our full judgment. But, Mr. Speaker, can I recognise the efforts of the Prime Minister to pull out all the stops to avoid President Trump's damaging tariffs? A letter from the King offering to water down online safety laws, even trying to send the Open to one of Trump's golf courses. The Prime Minister thought he'd secured 0% tariffs for British steel, but now Trump is threatening us with 50% unless we comply with his new 5-week deadline. Mr. Speaker, this is classic Trump, changing the terms of a deal he had already agreed. Does the Prime Minister share my fear that nothing will stop Trump messing the UK around, short of bunging a few £100 million into his Trump coin?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have a deal, we're implementing it, and within a very short time I'm very confident we will get those tariffs down in accordance with the deal. And I'll come back to him and update the House in due course, and I think the House will be very pleased at the outcome of that. But because of the approach... No, wait. This is zero tariffs on steel, and he says, no, they wouldn't. Well, let's come back to this in just a couple of weeks when we've implemented it. But they obviously don't want this. We've backed steel, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House. They laugh at attempts to back steel on their side of the House, and that's a big part of the problem.
David. Well, Mr. Speaker, I had hoped the Prime Minister would be now beginning to see the sort of man that Trump is and start getting tough on him. So we will come back to this issue. But moving on, Mr. Speaker, I welcome the remarks of the Prime Minister on Gaza, because I'm sure all of us are appalled by the latest scenes. Starving people desperate for food, water and medicine met with chaos and violence. The US-Israeli programme is clearly failing. And nothing short of lifting the full blockade on aid will do. But given the Netanyahu government refuses to do that, will the Prime Minister take more decisive action today? Will he push at the United Nations Security Council for humanitarian corridors to get the desperately needed aid urgently into Gaza?
Minister.
Can I give him my assurance, because this is a very important issue, that we are working at pace with our allies on that very issue to take whatever measures we can to get that humanitarian aid in. We've been doing that intensively over recent weeks, and I can give him my assurance we'll continue to do that, because that aid needs to get in at speed and at volume, and he's absolutely right about that.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been over 2 decades since the Labour government banned the cruel practice of fur farming. But the job is not done. Real fur and fur products are still being imported into the UK. This week, I delivered a petition to Number 10 with over 1 million signatures calling it's time to close the loopholes, ban the import and sale of real fur, and finally put the fur trade out of fashion.
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for her campaign? I know the Environment Minister will have heard her representations. We have commissioned the Expert Animal Welfare Committee to produce a full report on the responsible sourcing of fur to inform the next steps that need to be taken, and we're committed to publishing an animal welfare strategy later this week.
Rachel Gilmore.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent Molly is a single mother caring for a child with cancer. She cannot work because of her caring responsibilities. Since January, she has tried to claim disability living allowance and universal credit, but faced constant DWP bureaucracy. This bureaucracy is continuing right up to yesterday, when she received yet another frustrating letter from the DWP about her DLA. Will the Prime Minister assure Molly and others like her that his government is doing all that it can to help, and visit Tiverton and Minehead to see these challenges firsthand and work with me to find a solution?
Prime Minister.
Well, I can thank her for raising this case, and I'm deeply sorry to hear about Molly's situation. We are improving the lives of those that need it. But what I'll do, with her permission, the Secretary of State, the DWP, has just said to me, I'll look into the case. So if she could provide the details, I'll make sure that it gets proper attention and that we can deal with the particular problem she's raised. And I'm grateful to her, and I'm sure Molly is, for raising it. And I hope now we can take the action that's necessary.
Alex Burrows.
Mr. Speaker, in Wales, we will never forget how our steel industry was neglected by the Conservative government. They made unfunded promises, they refused to make critical decisions, and they left Port Talbot on a cliff edge. So can I welcome the news overnight that this Labour government has secured an exemption for our steel industry from the latest US tariffs, a deal secured by this Labour Prime Minister. Can I ask the Prime Minister if he will take this opportunity to update the House on what further work he is doing in order to support our steel workers across Wales and across our United Kingdom?
He's doing great work with the Welsh Labour colleagues to champion working people in Wales. Mr. Speaker, the United Kingdom is the only country in the world which won't be subject to the additional tariffs announced today, the only country in the world, and we are working with the US at this moment to swiftly implement the agreement that we've reached, which will see the 25% tariffs removed. We want that, they don't want that, and that's crucial. That is crucial for British jobs. We fought tooth and nail for our steel industry, saving jobs at British Steel and improving the deal at Port Talbot, and we'll continue to do so.
Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has repeatedly told this House that it is not for him or his government to determine what is and what is not a genocide. But that position is no longer tenable, because at the High Court recently, the Prime Minister instructed his lawyers to argue that in Gaza, and I quote, no genocide has occurred or is occurring. So the truth is, his government has made a determination. The question is, does he have the courage of his convictions, and will he repeat from that dispatch box what he told his lawyers to argue in the High Court, that he believes that no genocide has occurred or is occurring in Gaza?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I've said that we are strongly opposed and appalled by Israel's recent actions. I've been absolutely clear in condemning them and calling them out, whether that's the expansion of military operations, settler violence, or the dreadful blocking of aid. It's completely unacceptable. We must see a ceasefire, hostages must be released, and there must be aid into Gaza. But he talks about peace and security, Mr. Speaker. Compare their party, as I understand it, at this moment of global instability, as we go into a new era. What do they want to do? They want to get rid of the nuclear deterrent, the single most important capability that we have to keep the UK safe, harming the industry and harming the country.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Speaker. Carnegie UK was established by Dunfermline-born philanthropist Andrew Carnegie, and they found that people under 49 are twice as likely to have been negatively impacted by the rising cost of living compared to those over 65s. Mr. Speaker, it's vital we increase opportunities for younger people and help put more money in their pocket. But sadly this week we saw the Scottish Government seek to close off an opportunity for young people by refusing to support new skills investment from Rolls-Royce, while the college sector in Scotland also warns of a funding crisis. Can I ask the Prime Minister what more he is doing to make sure young people in Scotland get the opportunities they deserve despite a failing and stagnant SNP Scottish Government?
Well, I thank him for raising this. At a time of global conflict, it is staggering that the SNP policy is to block an £11 million investment for a new national welding centre on the Clyde. To block it. I was there, Mr. Speaker, earlier this week. I saw the huge potential for apprenticeships, for job opportunities and for young people. I support it. They block it. In England, Mr. Speaker, we're backing 120,000 more apprentices and £3 billion of funding as part of our plan for change. And despite the highest funding settlement in the history of devolution, they're cutting college budgets, they're blocking opportunities, they have no plan for Scotland's future.
Sir Poachin.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, he's no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all over again. Although, considering I think she was a Conservative member when Liz Truss was leader, she probably won't.
Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. During recess, I visited Scottish Action for Mental Health's Redhall Walled Garden, which I'm proud to say is in Edinburgh South West. It has operated for decades as a therapeutic horticultural centre supporting adults with mental health problems. Like similar community mental health services across Scotland, it is now under threat. It faces potential closure due to chronic underfunding of IGBs by the SNP government.
Yep.
Does the Prime Minister agree that facilities like Redhall Walled Garden should have been a priority for the SNP when deciding how to spend the record funding settlement Scottish Labour MPs won for Scotland?
Prime Minister.
What my honourable friend describes is how health services in Scotland are utterly broken under the SNP. From people waiting too long for mental health support in his constituency to the Wishaw neonatal unit in Hamilton, which the SNP are threatening to downgrade. In 2021, the SNP said they recruit 1,000 more community mental health workers. They utterly failed to do so. If the SNP had a plan to fix Scotland's NHS, they'd have done it by now. Scotland needs a change of direction.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sir John Cunliffe's interim report published yesterday laid out the fundamental changes that are needed for our water sector. This is felt no more acutely than in my constituency of Chichester. We have a harbour that's in an unfavourable declining condition and sewage is blighting our tourism industry. But with water bills from Southern Water rising by 47% for my constituents, can the Prime Minister tell them when they can expect to see the real change that this government promised and our waterways cleaned up for good?
Well, can I share her anger and frustration at the broken water system that we inherited, with frankly appalling sewage, higher bills and executives paying themselves huge bonuses. And the era of being rewarded for failure is over. We've launched a record 81 criminal investigations into law-breaking water companies in England, introduced the Water Act with prison sentences for polluting bosses and banning unfair bonuses, and will respond to the Independent Water Commission in full following the publication of the final report.
David Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The proposed Hemel Health Campus, a partnership between the NHS and the Council, presents a perfect opportunity to deliver on Labour's commitment to neighbourhood-based care, bringing services closer to where people live, in facilities designed around their needs. It can also help to regenerate our town centre. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it is essential that all stakeholders involved in the project are as ambitious as possible and work to deliver a community hospital that builds on the services currently available and reflects the evolving needs of our town?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I pay tribute to how he's bringing people together to deliver better care in the community that meets the needs of his constituents? The proposals for the health campus will be open to public consultation. I'd urge the whole community to input into that to ensure the strongest investment case is put forward. I'm pleased that waiting lists in his local trust have fallen by a fifth since March 24 because of the investment that we've put into the NHS, which of course was opposed by the parties opposite.
Now, I'm going to put together.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Over the past few months, I've been meeting with care providers in my constituency of Stratford-on-Avon who deliver essential and expert care to some of my most vulnerable constituents. But like so many small businesses, they're under huge financial pressures, and the hike in national insurance is yet another burden many can't afford. I welcome the government part U-turn on winter fuel payment cuts following pressure from these Liberal Democrat benches. So when will the Prime Minister offer relief to care providers and other small businesses and U-turn on the punitive hike to national insurance?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, we announced £502 million to support local authorities to manage the changes in NICs. We put £3.7 billion in additional funding for social care, doubled the Disabilities Facilities Grant, and introducing the first ever fair pay agreement for professional carers, including minimum standards for pay. But I would just gently say to her, her party opposed the budget which provides the money for the funding. You can't keep asking for more spending and oppose a budget which raises the money.
Natalie Fleet.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The first constituent to reach out to me was a brave bowls-over mummy who had waited 4 years, 5 months from rape to prosecution, with 3 postponements and multiple suicide attempts. I will do everything I can to use this chamber to speak out for women that are being so badly let down. How will the Prime Minister support me to make sure that when these survivors, these formidable women across the country come forward, they will get justice and there will be space in our prisons for their perpetrators?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for raising this case so powerfully and everything that she's doing on it? The case she's outlined is utterly shameful, and for far too many victims are waiting too long for justice. Mr. Speaker, we're delivering a record number of sitting days, reviewing criminal courts to speed up the hearing of these cases and have as a mission to halve violence against women and girls. She talks about the prison system. The party opposite left the prison system on the brink of collapse, routinely operating at 99% capacity because in 14 long years they only added just 500 extra places. We will deliver 14,000 new prison places so the public are protected from these vile offenders.
Lincoln John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister told us during the general election that he is a socialist. What's been more surprising is to find out in the last couple of weeks that the leader of the Reform Party might be one too. As the Chancellor puts the spending review and locks it down, will the Prime Minister please remind her of Mrs Thatcher's all too pertinent observation that the trouble is with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money to spend.
Was it Kwasi Kwarteng that he replaced? And now he stands there to give lectures on economic prudence. You couldn't script it. But, Mr. Speaker, the difference between the Labour government and the parties opposite reform is we believe in properly costing our plans. They've got £80 billion worth of unfunded commitments. Liz Truss 2.0.
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Blackpool's own boxing champion Brian Rose uses his gym to tackle knife crime, antisocial behaviour and give young people a safe space, demonstrating the significant impact of amateur gyms. Thousands of these amateur gyms up and down the country operate on a shoestring and can't afford to keep the lights on, reliant on brilliant charities like Maverick All-Stars, Empire's Fighting Chance and Matchroom in the Community. Would the Prime Minister join me in thanking these charities, praising the volunteers in these gyms, and will he throw a haymaker behind these gyms, giving them the knockout support they need to continue their vital work?
Well, can I thank him? He's a great champion for how amateur boxing gyms can transform both physical and mental health and confidence in young people. And the time, I have to say, given by selfless volunteers is inspiring, and we should thank them for it. England Boxing are investing £9 million in the sport, and GB Boxing will also receive more than £12 million during the next Olympic Games cycle. And I know my honourable friend will be looking forward to Liverpool hosting the inaugural World Boxing Championship, I think, in September.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since July, health services in my constituency have got worse. The Chase Hospital may close, in Borden the promised health hub has not arrived, and in Haslemere this week we've learnt that inpatient wards are being closed because of a lack of GP cover. The Prime Minister promised hundreds of more GPs. Could he possibly send one or two of them to Farnham and Borden?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I remind myself they left the NHS on its knees. The last Labour government brought the waiting list down to record lows. They drove them up to record highs. The last Labour government had the highest possible confidence in the NHS. They dragged it down to the lowest ever levels. Because of the money that we're putting in, we've done 3 million extra appointments in the first year of a Labour government. That's the difference Labour makes in power.
David Pinto-Chichinsky.
Mr. Speaker, the Environment Agency predicts that 8 million homes, that's 1 in 4 in England, could be at risk of flooding by 2050. But despite this, the party opposite presided over a tripling of the proportion of our flood defences deemed not adequate. By contrast, this Labour government is investing over £2.6 billion in new flood defences, including in the Greenway in my Hendon constituency. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's a shame that not all parties share this government's determination to keep homes safe from flooding?
Prime Minister. I thank you for highlighting this, because the party opposite left our flood defences in the worst state on record. It's prisons, it's NHS, it's the economy, it's flooding. Every single thing they touched, they broke. We're investing £2.65 million to build and maintain flood defences, and that means 52,000 more properties will be protected by March of next year.
Mr Speaker, Glastonbury is experiencing a notable increase in antisocial behaviour. St John's Church was recently forced to close its doors after gravestones were reportedly used as counters for drug transactions. Constituents Peter and Melanie told me that people have been targeted when collecting their pensions with demands for money, leaving them feeling scared and overwhelmed. The lawlessness is deterring tourists, and business owners have told me trade is suffering. As visitors start to arrive ahead of the Glastonbury Festival, could the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that he will give the police the additional resource that they need to tackle this threatening and menacing behaviour to reduce the devastating crime wave sweeping through the town?
Well, she's absolutely right to raise this, and antisocial behaviour massively impacts on individuals and their communities, and that's why we're introducing 13,000 new neighbourhood police and giving them better powers, respect orders, so they can actually deal with what they see on the streets effectively. It's very important we take this seriously.
David Burton-Sampson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This time last year, Southend United Football Club almost went bankrupt thanks to the mismanagement by the former owner. But on Sunday, they made it to Wembley for the National League playoff finals. And despite being beaten by Oldham Athletic in the 11th hour, it was like the phoenix rising from the flames to see them on the pitch. So will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Southend United on their outstanding recovery, and give me an assurance that the government's doing all they can to make sure that no club ever has to go through what our club went through?
Let me congratulate Southend on what was an incredible achievement. Commiserations for the final result. One of the police officers on my team, Mr Speaker, is an ardent Southend supporter, so I know all about the team and the plans and the stadium and what it means. But I should also congratulate Oldham, of course, for that victory as well. Thank you.
Right, final question, Sir David Davis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In 1999, the Prime Minister produced a book on miscarriage of justice, recommending ways of preventing them or quickly putting them right. But in 2014, people who had been wrongly imprisoned and then exonerated were only allowed compensation if they could prove their innocence beyond reasonable doubt. This ignored the decision of the court exonerating them, and actually meant that 93% of people who had been wrongfully imprisoned, often had their lives destroyed, got no compensation whatsoever. This is an institutional miscarriage of justice. Will he instruct the Department of Justice to review this matter and pay personal attention to actually getting this travesty of justice resolved?
Prime Minister.
Well, he raises a really important issue that I'm obviously aware of. It is right that victims of miscarriage can apply for compensation and appropriately do so, and I'll take away what he says and have it looked at.
Right, with that completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front bench change over.
Scots in Scotland.
Euston.
Question number 6, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our recent trade deals with the United States, India and the EU will improve access to vital markets for businesses in both Scotland and Northern Ireland. These are deals with the most populous country in the world, the richest country in the world and our most important trading partner. I recognise the importance of economic cooperation between Northern Ireland and Scotland, and indeed earlier this week I met with my honourable friend, the member for South Antrim, and a local business to discuss exactly this.
Susan.
Mr. Speaker, would the Minister consider setting up a meeting with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to consider creating a trade fair between Northern Ireland businesses and Scottish businesses? This would create networks, possibly create jobs, and would be great for the economy for both Northern Ireland and Scotland, and would certainly go down well with businesses in North Down, my constituency, and right across the UK.
Mr. Speaker, I'd be delighted to see more trade between Scotland and Northern Ireland, and will very happily meet with colleagues in the Northern Ireland office to explore that.
Alan Gamble.
Speaker, Scotland and Northern Ireland set to benefit from this government's trio of trade deals. Does she agree with me it's astonishing the SNP stands with the Tories and Reform against an EU trade deal that's good for Scotland, and that after almost 20 years in government, the SNP have no plan for Scotland? 1 in 6 Scots on NHS waiting lists, Ayrshire ferries late and costing £1 billion, 1 in 6 Scots not in education, employment or training, and no plan for the defence of our union.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend that it's absolutely astonishing that we see ranged on the benches opposite numerous people who have talked down the potential of Scotland's exporters, who said that there isn't any benefit to be had from these deals, from a Scottish business sector that is desperate to grow, desperate to export, and is delighted with these 3 trade deals that will make such a difference to them.
Secretary of State Andrew
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. For years, Scotland's roads have been underinvested in. The A9, A96, A77, A75, all in dire need of upgrading or dualling, all delayed or even cancelled by the SNP. So in the spirit of improving economic cooperation between the nations of the UK, specifically between Scotland and Northern Ireland, given the vital importance to individuals, businesses and hauliers of the A77 and A75, can I ask, is she seeking the consequent Barnett consequentials of this morning's announcement by the Chancellor to be ring-fenced so the SNP must spend this money on improving roads in Scotland?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to confirm that we're in ongoing conversation with all relevant parties, but yes, we would like to see an increase in trade.